The cold darkness of space stretched endlessly around the exploration ship, Horizon's Edge. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars that had become his home for the past 2 years. His crew of 35 brave souls had volunteered for this mission, humanity's first journey beyond their solar system. "Captain, we're approaching the target coordinates," called out Lieutenant Amy Chen from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, checking their position against the star charts. Jake nodded and walked to the center of the bridge. "All stop. Begin deep space scan." The ship's engines went quiet. In the silence, Jake could hear the steady hum of the life support systems and the soft beeping of various instruments. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. After traveling for months through the void, they had finally reached their destination, a point in space where Earth's long-range telescopes had detected strange energy readings. "Sir, you need to see this," said Dr. Tom Baker, the ship's science officer. His voice carried a mix of excitement and confusion. Jake moved to the science station where Tom was studying his screens. The older man's gray hair was messy from running his hands through it, something he did when he was thinking hard. "What do you have, Tom?" "There's something out there, Captain. Something big." Tom pointed at his screen. "It's about 2 kilometers ahead, but it's not showing up on visual. The energy readings are off the charts." Jake frowned. "Could it be a ship?" "Don't think so. The energy pattern is unlike anything we've seen before. It's old, Captain. Really old. Put it on the main screen." The large screen at the front of the bridge flickered to life. At first, there was only darkness and distant stars. Slowly, a shape began to appear as the ship's sensors worked to make it visible. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Floating in the void was a massive crystalline structure, unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It was shaped like a twisted tower, with smooth surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a soft blue light. "My God," whispered Amy. "What is that thing?" "I don't know," Jake replied, his voice quiet with wonder. "But we're going to find out." "Tom, can you tell how old it is?" Tom's fingers flew over his controls. "Captain, based on the energy decay patterns, this thing has been drifting out here for at least 50,000 years, maybe longer." A chill ran down Jake's spine. 50,000 years ago, humans were still learning to make fire. Whatever race had built this was ancient beyond imagination. "Any signs of life?" Jake asked. "None that I can detect. But Captain, there's something else. The artifact is moving toward us." Jake's eyes snapped back to the screen. Sure enough, the crystal structure was slowly drifting in their direction. It wasn't fast, but it was definitely moving. "Red alert," Jake ordered. "All hands to battle stations." The bridge lights dimmed, and red warning lights began flashing. The ship crew members rushed to their emergency positions. "Captain," said Amy, "should we move away?" Jake studied the approaching artifact. His training told him to retreat to keep his crew safe, but his curiosity was stronger. This was why they had come out here, to explore, to discover, to learn. "No. We hold position. But keep the engines ready. If that thing shows any hostile intent, we leave immediately." The next few minutes felt like hours. The crew watched in tense silence as the ancient artifact drifted closer. When it was only a few hundred meters away, it suddenly stopped. "Energy readings are spiking," Tom reported. "Something's happening." The symbols on the artifact's surface began glowing brighter. The blue light pulsed in patterns, almost like a heartbeat. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot out from the artifact and struck their ship. "Shields up," Jake shouted. "Captain, the beam isn't attacking us," Tom said, his voice filled with amazement. "It's scanning us, learning about us." Light moved across the ship's hull, probing and examining. Jake could feel the ship's systems responding to the scan, but nothing was being damaged. "It's reading our computers," Amy reported. "All our data files, our history, our language." "Should I stop it?" asked Lieutenant Ben Torres from the weapons station. "No," Jake said. "Let it learn. Maybe it will talk to us." The scanning lasted for 10 minutes. Then the light beam stopped, and the artifact went dark for a moment. When the lights came back on, they were different, warmer, more welcoming. Captain Tom's voice was shaking with excitement. It's trying to communicate. The symbols on its surface, they're changing to match our language. Jake stared at the screen as the alien symbols shifted and twisted, gradually forming words he could read. The message was simple but clear. Welcome, travelers. Open a channel, Jake ordered. Amy's hands moved over her controls. Channel open, sir. Jake took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Horizon's Edge. We come in peace. The response came not as sound, but as words that appeared directly in their minds. The voice was ancient and tired, but somehow gentle. I am the keeper of memory. I have waited long for new travelers to find me. Your species is young, but I sense strength in you. Come aboard if you dare. There is much you must learn. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. He saw fear in some faces, but also determination. They had come this far. They couldn't turn back now. Tom, Amy, Ben, you're with me? The rest of you stay here and monitor the situation. If we're not back in 2 hours, return to Earth immediately. The 4 officers suited up and took a shuttle to the alien artifact. As they approached, an opening appeared in its surface, just large enough for their small craft. Inside, they found corridors of living crystal that glowed with soft light. The air was breathable, somehow adjusted to their needs. At the center of the structure, they found a large chamber filled with floating displays of light. The Keeper spoke to them again, its voice echoing in their minds. I am the last of my kind. We were explorers, like you. We traveled the galaxy and found it full of life. But something terrible happened. A darkness came, and one by one, every civilization we knew was destroyed. The light displays around them suddenly came alive, showing images of beautiful worlds and strange alien cities. Then the images changed, showing the same worlds empty and dead. The silence found them all. The Keeper continued. They hunt any species that reaches for the stars. They have been doing this for millions of years, and now I fear they will come for you. Jake felt his blood run cold. What do you mean? Your ship's signal, your presence here, it will draw their attention. They are already coming. The displays showed new images, dark ships moving through space, heading toward a small blue world that Jake recognized with horror. Earth. How long do we have? Jake asked. Not long, but there is hope. I have been preparing for this moment for 50,000 years. I can give you the tools you need to fight back. But the choice is yours. Do you run and hide, or do you stand and fight? Jake looked at his crew, then back at the alien displays showing his home world. There was really no choice at all. We fight. The horizon's edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a green and blue planet. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, studying the world that appeared on their main screen. According to the Keeper's star maps, this was Kepler 44b, home to a species called the Valkyrie. Initial scans show the planet is alive with vegetation, reported Dr. Tom Baker from his science station. The atmosphere is breathable for us, though it has more oxygen than Earth. Jake nodded, remembering what the Keeper had told them. The Valkyrie were supposed to be plant-like beings who lived in harmony with their world. More importantly, they were marked for destruction by the silence. Any signs of advanced technology? Jake asked. Tom shook his head. Nothing mechanical. But I'm reading some unusual energy patterns from the surface. They're organic in nature. Lieutenant Amy Chen looked up from her communications station. Captain, I'm detecting radio signals. Very basic ones, like early Earth broadcasts. Again, you understand them? Amy frowned, listening carefully to her equipment. It's not like any language we know, but there are patterns. Give me some time, and I might be able to work out basic meanings. Jake walked to the captain's chair and sat down. The Keeper had warned them that many species on the list were already dead, their worlds empty and cold. Finding life here was both a relief and a worry. It meant the silence hadn't arrived yet, but it also meant these people were in terrible danger. Tom, launch a probe. I want detailed scans of the populated areas, but keep it high. We don't want to scare anyone. The probe launched from the ship's belly and streaked toward the planet. Within an hour, they had detailed images of the surface. Jake stared at the pictures in amazement. The Velkari cities were unlike anything humans had ever built. Instead of concrete and steel, their buildings were made of living trees that had been grown into shapes. Massive trunk towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges made of thick branches. The whole city seemed to breathe and move gently in the wind. Incredible, whispered Tom. Their entire civilization is biological. No metals, no machines that I can detect. Look at this, Amy said, pointing to her screen. I've been analyzing their communications. They seem to spend most of their time discussing art, philosophy, and something they call the Great Growing. There's no mention of weapons, armies, or conflict of any kind. Jake felt a chill in his stomach. These people were completely peaceful. They had no idea what was coming for them. Captain, said Lieutenant Ben Torres from his station, should we make contact? Jake thought carefully. The Keeper had given them the location of many worlds, but hadn't told them exactly how to warn the inhabitants. Every species was different. Some might listen, others might panic. Yes, but carefully. Amy, can you create a basic translation program? Already working on it, sir. Their language is musical. They seem to communicate through different tones. In harmonies, it's actually quite beautiful. Jake made his decision. Prepare a shuttle. Tom, Amy, you're with me. Ben, you have the ship. If anything goes wrong, get back to Earth immediately. The shuttle landed in a clearing near one of the smaller Velkari settlements. Jake had chosen this spot because it seemed less populated. He didn't want to cause a panic by appearing in the middle of their biggest city. As they stepped out of the shuttle, Jake got his first look at the Velkari in person. 3 of them were approaching through the forest, moving with a graceful, swaying motion. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with bark-like skin that was green and brown instead of hair. They had leaves that rustled softly as they walked. Their faces were almost human, but their eyes were large and golden, like sunlight through leaves. The lead Velkari stopped about 10 feet away and made a sound like wind chimes mixed with a flute. Amy quickly checked her translation device. He sang, "Welcome. Strange flowers from the sky." Amy looked puzzled. "I think flowers might be their word for people." Jake stepped forward slowly, his hands raised in what he hoped was a peaceful gesture. "We are humans from a world called Earth. We have come to warn you of danger." The Velkari tilted his head, listening to Amy's device translate the words into their musical language. When he understood, his golden eyes grew wide with what looked like concern. "Danger," the translation, came back. "What kind of danger?" "There has been no danger in our world for 1,000 seasons. There are others in the stars," Jake said carefully. "Bad ones. They destroy worlds and kill everyone on them. They are coming here." The 3 Velkari looked at each other, their leaves rustling with what seemed like confusion. The leader spoke again, and Amy translated. "He says they don't understand. They've never hurt anyone or anything. Why would anyone want to hurt them?" Jake felt his heart break a little. These people were so innocent, so pure, they couldn't even imagine violence. "Sometimes bad people don't need a reason," Jake said. "They just want to destroy things. You've seen what they do to other worlds." The Velkari leader stepped closer, and Jake could smell something like fresh pine and growing. Flowers. When the alien spoke, his musical voice was sad. "If what you say is true, Skyflower, then what can we do? We know nothing of fighting or hiding. We know only how to grow and create and love." "We can help you," Jake said. "We can take some of your people to safety. We can teach you to defend yourselves." The Velkari made a sound like wind through leaves. Jake thought it might be laughter. "Defend. We do not even have a word for that in our language until now, when your metal words created it." Amy looked at Jake with worry. "Captain, their entire language is built around concepts of growth, harmony, and creation. They literally cannot think in terms of violence or conflict." Before Jake could respond, Tom's communicator crackled to life. "Captain, you need to get back here now. Long-range sensors are picking up something big approaching the system. Jake's blood turned cold. How long until it arrives? Based on current speed? Maybe 6 hours? Jake looked at the Velkhari, who were listening to the translation with growing alarm. Their golden eyes were wide with a fear they had never felt before. We need to evacuate your people, Jake said urgently. How many are there on your world? No. The Velkhari leader's leaves rustled with distress. 50 million flowers live on our world tree, but we cannot leave. This is where our roots are. Is where we belong. If you stay, you'll die, Jake said. The alien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was like a sad song. Perhaps it is better to die as flowers than to live as something else. Jake grabbed the alien's bark-like arm. No. Life is always worth preserving. Trust us. We'll find a way to bring you home when it's safe. The Velkhari looked into Jake's eyes and seemed to see something there that convinced him. He nodded slowly. We will trust you, Skyflower. But we cannot force others to leave their roots. Each must choose. Jake looked up at the sky, where he knew death was approaching. 6 hours to save 50 million innocent lives. It seemed impossible, but humanity had never been good at accepting the impossible. The shadow ships appeared at the edge of the system like dark wounds in space. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the horizon's edge as his sensors counted them 12 massive vessels, each one twice the size of his ship. Moved in perfect formation, silent and deadly. They're not showing up on most of our instruments, reported Dr. Tom Baker, his voice tight with fear. It's like they're absorbing light and energy around them. Jake turned to Lieutenant Amy Chen. Any response from the Velkhari evacuation? Amy shook her head sadly. Only about 2,000 agreed to come with us. The rest rather die with their world tree than live without it. Jake felt anger burn in his chest. 2,000 out of 50 million. He had tried for hours to convince more Velkhari to evacuate, but they simply couldn't understand the concept of abandoning their home. To them, leaving their planet was worse than death. The shadow ships are moving toward the planet, called Lieutenant Ben Torres from his weapons station. Should we intercept? Jake looked at his small ship and crew of 35, then at the 12 massive enemy vessels. It would be suicide. But he couldn't just watch an entire peaceful civilization get destroyed. All hands, battle stations. Set course to intercept. Captain Tom said quietly, We don't stand a chance against those ships. Maybe not, Jake replied. But we're going to try. Amy, send a message to the shadow ships. Tell them to leave this system. Amy's fingers moved over her controls. Message sent, sir. No response. The horizon's edge raced toward the shadow fleet at full speed. Jake watched as the enemy ships completely ignored them, continuing their approach to the green and blue world below. They're not even acknowledging us, Ben said. It's like we don't exist. That changed when the first shadow ship reached the planet's atmosphere. Jake watched in horror as a pale beam of light shot down from the alien vessel and struck one of the Velkhari cities. But instead of explosions or fires, something much worse happened. The living city began to wither and die. The great tree towers turned gray and brittle. The flowing bridges of branches cracked and fell. Within minutes, a city that had lived and grown for thousands of years became nothing but dead wood and dust. My God, whispered Tom. What kind of weapon is that? Amy was scanning the beam with her instruments. It's not destroying matter, Captain. It's draining something else. Life force, maybe. The energy that keeps living things alive. More beams. Shot down from other shadow ships. Across the planet's surface, Velkhari cities died one by one. Jake could see the death spreading like a disease, turning the green world gray and lifeless. We have to do something, Jake said through gritted teeth. Target the lead shadow ship. Fire everything we have. The horizon's edge unleashed its full arsenal at the nearest enemy vessel. Missiles, energy beams, and railgun rounds struck the shadow ship's hull. For a moment, Jake felt hope as he saw the impacts light up the dark surface. Then his hope died. The shadow ship absorbed every attack without taking any damage. It was like firing at a black hole. No effect, Captain, Ben reported. Our weapons aren't even scratching them. That's when the shadow ship finally noticed them. It turned slowly, like a great beast waking up, and pointed directly at the human ship. Energy spike detected, Tom called out. They're targeting us with the same weapon. All power to shields, Jake ordered. The pale beam struck the horizon's edge with devastating force. What? Jake felt the ship shudder around him as alarms blared throughout the bridge. But something strange happened. Instead of immediate death, the ship kept flying. Shield generators are failing, Ben reported. But they're holding longer than they should. Amy looked at her instruments in amazement. Captain, the beam is trying to drain our life force, but it's not working as fast as it did on the Valkyrie. We're resisting it somehow. Jake felt the truth hit him like lightning. It's because we're human. We don't give up. We don't accept death easily. The shadow ship increased power to its beam, but the horizon's edge continued to resist. Jake could feel the weapon trying to pull the life out of him and his crew, but every time it got close, something inside them pushed back. Tom, how long can we hold out? At this rate, maybe 10 minutes? But Captain, that's 10 times longer than any other species in the Keeper's records. Jake's mind raced. 10 minutes wasn't much, but it was something. And if humans could resist the Silence's weapons longer than other species, maybe they had a chance to fight back. Set course. For the planet, Jake ordered. We're going to save who we can. Sir, the Valkyrie evacuation ships are already launching, Amy reported. But the shadow ships are targeting them too. Jake watched as several Valkyrie bioships tried to escape the planet's atmosphere. They were beautiful vessels, grown rather than built, shaped like giant seeds with flowing fins. But the shadow ships cut them down with their life-draining beams, turning the living ships into dead husks that fell back to the planet. Not on my watch, Jake growled. Then, target the shadow ship attacking the evacuation vessels. Captain, our weapons don't work on them. Maybe not, but we can get their attention. Fire everything. The horizon's edge unleashed another barrage at the shadow ships. Again, the weapons did no damage, but they served their purpose. 3 of the enemy vessels turned toward the human ship, their pale beams lashing out. Evasive maneuvers, Jake ordered. Keep them focused on us. The human ship danced through space, dodging the deadly beams while the Valkyrie ships escaped behind them. Jake felt pride swell in his chest as he watched his crew work. Amy rerouted power to keep their shields up. Tom found ways to boost their engines beyond normal limits. Ben kept their weapons firing even though they were useless. They were all afraid. Jake could see it in their faces. But they didn't let fear stop them from doing what was right. More Valkyrie ships are launching, Amy reported. The ones we saved are helping coordinate the evacuation. Jake smiled grimly. At least some of the Valkyrie would survive. But his ship was taking heavy damage from the shadow ship's attacks. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the lights flickered as power systems failed. Hull breach on Deck 3, Tom called out. Emergency force fields are holding, but barely. How many Valkyrie ships have escaped, Jake asked. 15 so far, Amy answered. Maybe 3,000 survivors total? It wasn't much compared to 50 million, but it was something. Jake looked at the planet below, now almost completely gray and lifeless. In just a few hours, the Silence had murdered an entire world. Captain, Tom said urgently. Long-range sensors show more shadow ships approaching. Lots more. Jake's heart sank. If more enemy ships arrived, they wouldn't be able to protect any more evacuation vessels. Set course out of the system, Jake ordered. Signal the remaining Valkyrie ships to follow us. As the horizon's edge limped away from the dying planet, Jake took one last look at what had been a beautiful world full of peaceful life. Now, it was nothing but a gray ball of death. But they had learned something important. Humans could resist the Silence's weapons longer than any other species. They had saved some of the Valkyrie. Most importantly, they had proven that the Silence could be fought. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. The war room in Earth's military headquarters buzzed with tense energy. Captain Jake Morrison stood before a table of generals and admirals, his uniform still showing damage from his recent battle with the Silence. On the large screen behind him, Images of the dead Valkyrie world played in silent horror. General Robert Hayes, head of Earth's Defense Forces, slammed his fist on the table. This is what we're facing. Complete extinction. Every military analyst agrees we need to build the biggest fleet possible and hit them before they reach Earth. Jake shook his head. With respect, General, that won't work. I've seen their ships. Our weapons can't even scratch them. Building. More won't help if they're all useless. Admiral Lisa Park leaned forward. Then what do you suggest, Captain? That we just give up? No, Jake said firmly. We use the artifact. The Keeper said it could show us other surviving worlds. We find them, unite them, and fight together. The room erupted in arguments. Several officers spoke at once. Their voices overlapping in confusion and anger. It's crazy, shouted Colonel Mike Stevens. We should focus on defending Earth, not running around the galaxy playing diplomat. General Hayes stood up. Morrison, your mission is over. You did well, but now it's time for real military strategy. Report to debrief, and then take leave. Jake felt anger burn in his chest. General, you're making a mistake. The Silence has been doing this for millions of years. They know how to fight conventional forces. Need a different approach. Dismiss, Captain. Jake saluted and left the room, his mind racing. Couldn't let Earth make the same mistake as every other world the Silence had destroyed. There had to be another way. 3 days later, Jake stood in the hangar bay of the Horizon's Edge. His ship had been repaired and restocked, officially for extended patrol duties. What the military didn't know was that Jake had other plans. Dr. Tom Baker approached, carrying his personal equipment. Are you sure about this, Jake? We're basically going against direct orders, I'm sure, Jake replied. Amy, Ben, and the others are already aboard. We also have the Valkyrie survivors who want to help. Tom nodded toward the cargo bay, where several of the plant-like aliens were preparing for the journey. They had changed since their world's destruction. Their golden eyes now held a sadness that hadn't been there before, but also something new. Determination. The Valkyrie scientist named Bloom has been working with the artifact, Tom said. She thinks she can help us understand it better. Jake walked over to where Bloom was standing near the artifact. The tall Valkyrie's bark-like skin had darker patches now, like scars on a tree. Her leaves rustled softly as she turned to face him. Captain Skyflower, she said in her musical voice, now translated perfectly by their improved language systems. The Memory Keeper's gift holds many secrets. I believe I can help unlock them. What have you learned? Jake asked. Bloom placed her hand on the crystal surface of the artifact. Immediately, the symbols began glowing and shifting. The Silence are not just destroyers. They are ... collectors. They take something from each world before they kill it. They collect knowledge, memories, the very essence of what makes each species unique. They store it all in a great library. Bloom's leaves rustled with anger. They have been stealing the souls of civilizations for millions of years. Jake felt sick. It wasn't enough for the Silence to just kill. They had to steal everything that made their victims special first. There's more, Bloom continued. The artifact is not just a key to finding other worlds. It's a key to their library. And their library is also their greatest weakness. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Lieutenant Amy Chen's voice came. Over the ship's communication system. Captain, we're ready for departure. All crew aboard. Jake looked around the hangar one last time. Officially, they were leaving on a routine patrol. In reality, they were beginning humanity's first real mission to fight back against the Silence. Take us out, Amy, Jake ordered. The Horizon's Edge left Earth's orbit and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Their first destination was a system. The artifact had shown them a world where another species might have survived the Silence's attacks. The journey took 3 days. When they arrived, Jake's heart sank. The planet was dead, its surface cracked and gray. But Tom's sensors picked up something unexpected. Captain, there are artificial structures on the planet's surface. They're deep underground. Life signs. Faint ones. It's very faint. Jake ordered a landing party to investigate. What they found amazed him. Beneath the dead surface, a network of tunnels and chambers had been carved from solid rock, and in those chambers they found the Corvin. The Corvin were insect-like beings, about 4 feet tall, with hard shells and multiple arms. Their leader, who called himself Click Speak Struth, explained through translation devices how they had survived. When the shadow death came, we did not fight. We hid, deep, deep underground. We waited, we watched, we learned. Click Speaks Truth's antenna twitched with emotion. Many of us died in the tunnels, but some lived. We have been waiting for someone like you. Jake learned that the Corvin had been watching the silence for decades, learning their patterns. They had discovered something important. The shadow ships always returned to the same location after destroying a world. Where do they go? Jake asked. To the great dark, where no stars shine. We tried to follow once, but our ships were too slow. But yours. Click Speaks Truth gestured at the horizon's edge. Yours might be fast enough. Over the next several weeks, Jake's growing fleet visited 6 more worlds. They found survivors on 3 of them. The underground Corvin, a water-dwelling species called the Nyx, who had hidden in ocean trenches, and a group of energy beings called the Lux who existed in the space between dimensions. Each species had learned something different about the silence. The Nyx had discovered that the shadow ships were vulnerable when they were feeding, draining life from planets. The Lux had learned that the silence communicated through dark energy patterns that could be intercepted. But it was Bloom and the other Valkyrie scientists who made the biggest discovery. Working with the artifact day and night, they finally unlocked its deepest secret. The artifact is not just a key, Bloom explained to Jake, as they gathered in the ship's main conference room. Representatives from all the survivor species were present. It is a map to the silence's home base. More than that, it's a weapon. Jake leaned forward. What kind of weapon? The race that built this artifact was the first to face the silence. They could not stop them, but they created a way to destroy the silence's great library. If we can reach their home base and activate the weapon, we destroy everything they've stolen, Jake finished. All the knowledge, all the memories of every civilization they've killed. Click Speaks Truth's antenna twitched. But would that stop them? Bloom's leaves rustled sadly. We don't know. But it would be justice for all the worlds they have murdered. Jake looked around the room at the survivors of 4 different species, all united by loss and hope. Earth's military was building ships and weapons, preparing for a conventional war. But Jake knew that wouldn't be enough. The real war wouldn't be fought with bullets and missiles. It would be fought with courage, determination, and the combined knowledge of every species that had ever faced the silence and lived to tell about it. Set course for the Great Dark, Jake ordered. It's time to take the fight to them. The Great Dark was unlike anything Captain Jake Morrison had ever seen. It was a region of space where no stars shone, where even the distant galaxies seemed to fade into nothingness. The horizon's edge and its small fleet of survivor ships moved carefully through the void, following the ancient artifact's guidance. Sensors are picking up massive structures ahead, reported Dr. Tom Baker from his station. The scale is ... incredible. Jake stared at the main screen as shapes began to appear in the darkness. What he saw made his breath catch. Floating in the void was a structure so large it could have held a dozen planets. It was made of the same dark material as the shadow. Ships, but covered in veins of sickly green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. That's it, whispered Bloom, the Valkyrie scientist. Her leaves rustled with a mixture of fear and awe. The heart of silence, where they store everything they have stolen. Lieutenant Amy Chen turned from her communications station. Captain, I'm detecting thousands of shadow ships around the structure, maybe tens of thousands. Jake felt his stomach drop. Their small fleet consisted of 1 human ship and a handful of survivor vessels. Against thousands of enemy ships, they had no chance in a direct fight. There's something else added, Click Speaks Truth, the Corvin leader whose ship was flying. Alongside them, the dark energy patterns the Lux detected, they're all coming from that structure. It's like the brain of their entire civilization. Jake looked at the artifact that sat in the center of his bridge. The crystal structure was glowing brighter than ever, its symbols shifting and changing rapidly. "Bloom, can you activate the weapon?" Jake asked, a tall plant being placed her hands on the artifact's surface. "I can try, but Captain, there's something you must understand. Using this weapon will destroy everything in the heart of silence. All the knowledge, all the memories of every dead civilization, but it might also destroy us." "What do you mean?" "The weapon uses life force as power. To activate it fully, someone must give their life willingly. And even then, we don't know if it will be enough to stop the silence permanently." Jake felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. If they used the weapon, they might save the galaxy but lose themselves. If they didn't, Earth and every other living world would eventually fall to the silence. Before he could decide, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Captain, the shadow ships have detected us," called Lieutenant Ben Torres from Weapons. "They're moving to intercept." Jake watched as dozens of the dark vessels began turning toward their small fleet. In minutes, they would be surrounded and destroyed. "All ships, evasive action," Jake ordered. "Get us closer to the heart of silence." The mixed fleet of survivors scattered, each ship using its own unique abilities to avoid the pursuing shadow ships. The Corvin vessels disappeared into stealth mode, becoming nearly invisible. The Nyx ship from the water world moved like liquid through space, flowing around enemy fire. The Lux energy beings flickered in and out of normal space. Impossible to target, but the horizon's edge was just a human ship with normal technology. Shadow ship beams lashed out at them, and Jake felt the vessels shudder under the attacks. "Shields down to 30%, Ben reported. "Keep us moving toward the heart," Jake ordered. "Bloom, how long do you need?" "The weapon is almost ready, but I need to get closer. The artifact must be within the heart itself to work." Jake made his decision. Amy signaled the other ships. "Tell them to keep the Shadow Fleet busy. We're going in alone." "Captain, that's suicide," Tom protested. "Maybe, but it's the only way." The horizon's edge broke away from the battle and raced toward the massive dark structure. Jake could see openings in its surface bays, where shadow ships launched and returned from their missions of destruction. There, Jake pointed at one of the larger openings. "Take us in through that bay." Amy's hands flew over her controls. "Captain, that bay is full of shadow ships. Then we'll have to make room." The human ship dove toward the opening, its weapons blazing. The shadow ships inside the bay were caught by surprise. They had never been attacked in their own home before. Several of the dark vessels were damaged by the unexpected assault, creating enough space for the horizon's edge to slip inside. The interior of the Heart of Silence was a nightmare of organic technology. Walls pulsed with veins of energy and strange growths covered every surface.
Ow.
Jake could feel the weight of millions of stolen lives pressing down on him. "The artifact is responding to something," Bloom said urgently. "There we need to reach. That central chamber." Jake could see it, a vast space at the center of the structure, filled with floating spheres of light. Each sphere contained the memories and knowledge of a dead civilization. Landing bay ahead, Amy called out. "But Captain, it's heavily defended." "I don't care. Now, put us down." The ship touched down in the alien landing bay with a crash that shook everyone aboard. Immediately, strange creatures began pouring toward them, the servants of the silence. Beings that had once been living but were now nothing but tools. "Away team, with me," Jake ordered. "Tom, Amy, Ben, Bloom, we're going to finish this." They fought their way through corridors of living darkness, following the artifact's pull toward the central chamber. The creatures that attacked them were, like nothing from any normal world, twisted things that had been changed by the silence's power. Finally, they reached the heart of the structure. The chamber was enormous, filled with thousands of floating spheres. Each one glowed with the memories of a dead world. Jake could hear whispers in the air, the voices of countless civilizations crying out for justice. "This is it," Bloom said, placing the artifact on a raised platform in the center of the room. "But Captain, someone must stay with the artifact. To guide its power, they won't survive the activation." Jake looked at his crew, his friends who had followed him across the galaxy. He couldn't ask any of them to die. "I'll do it," he said. "No," Bloom said firmly. "This is not your burden, Skyflower. My people created the art of growing life. Let me use that gift one last time to grow hope instead of death." Before Jake could protest, the Valkyrie scientist placed her hands on the artifact. The crystal structure blazed with light, and Jake felt power building around them. "Get back to the ship," Bloom said, her musical voice already fading. "Tell the galaxy that the Valkyrie chose to plant one last seed." Jake and his crew ran back through the corridors as the entire structure began to shake. Behind them, light was spreading from the central chamber, touching each floating sphere and setting it free. They reached their ship just as the first explosions began. The horizon's edge blasted out of the landing bay and away from the heart of silence as it tore itself apart from within. Jake watched from the bridge as the massive structure collapsed, taking with it the stolen memories of a million worlds. The shadow ships around it stopped moving, as if the death of their heart had left them without purpose. "Captain," Amy said. Quietly, long-range sensors show the shadow ships throughout the galaxy have stopped attacking. They're just ... floating. Jake nodded, feeling both victory and loss. They had won, but at a terrible price. Bloom was gone, and with her, one of the kindest beings he had ever met. "Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "We have news to deliver." As the horizon's edge jumped to faster-than-light speed, Jake looked back one last time at the fading light where the heart of silence had been. The war wasn't over. There would be more battles to fight, more choices to make. But for the first time since this journey began, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope.